Hello, everyone, and welcome to Get Into Flow, the mindset shifting podcast. I am your host, Sabrina, a transformational mindset coach focused on confidence. And today I'm going to share with you a very vulnerable story about how burnout saved my life. Now, if you're new here, welcome. Thank you for being here. This is a great place to start because you'll get to know me. You'll get to know how my journey has led me to this point and why this platform of a podcast is so important for me to share, to inspire, to educate. And for those who have been listening, who have been on this journey with me, I appreciate you. Thank you for continuing to tune in every week. You may remember that the very first podcast episode that I published was about my story, and that was 3 years ago, believe it or not. So I haven't listened back to that episode because I wanted to come in today with a fresh perspective on my story. Because I do believe that although the facts of my story are the same, for sure my perspective has changed. With what I've learned along the way, with how my life has evolved, I'm perhaps going to look back on these facts with a different point of view. And that's what I'm curious about learning today about myself. And what this will do for you as you're watching, as you're listening, is hopefully help you feel like you're not alone, hopefully shed some light on some realizations that you've been having, encourage you to reflect. I love to offer journal prompts and things to help you move along your journey and help you get to where you want to be faster than if you were to do it alone. All right, we're about to dive in. Are you ready? Young Sabrina has always been an artist, a creative soul. I've always danced for as long as I can remember. That was my passion, that was my outlet. And I always felt different. I don't know if you could relate, but I was always the one who was doing things a little differently than everyone else in the family. And proof also comes in the form of growing up and being single, not having children, choosing my own path, redirecting my life, leaving my job, which I'll explain in a moment what that felt like and what that looked like. But I was different. I am different. And only recently I've come to accept that that's what makes me special and unique. But at the time, all we want to do and feel is that we belong. So having this personality and this desire to be creative and to think outside the box and to do things differently, I was quite conflicted when I realized that doing things differently also meant that you might not always be accepted. And our human desire to belong, to be part of something, to have support and love from others. Unfortunately, in society, that means that you have to fit into that box to be accepted. Only looking back now, I realized that I had this tremendous inner conflict as a child and even growing up where I was told I needed to do things a certain way and check those boxes off the list, as we've all been told. But I always had that deep desire to want more or to do it in a different way, to do it in my own way, to explore, to be curious. Being different, I come to realize, is my superpower. And I think it's all of our superpowers. You are unique. You bring something very special to this earth, to this planet, and it should not be suppressed to be like everybody else, that we don't need to connect on the things that society tells us we should all have. So a big one is following success. You know, when it comes to your career, your job, success looks a certain way. And this is also something that I've come to realize that is very unique to you. Success is something that you get to determine, that you get to decide, that you get to set and play by your own rules. So all of this wisdom that is coming through is all in retrospect, because at the time, I was on the path of the success that everybody says we should have. So you get into a very secure career. You climb the corporate ladder, you get those promotions, you get the salary that comes with the promotion, and the higher the salary, the more numbers in there, the better off you are, the more successful you are. So the constant struggle, because it is the struggle and the strive to always be better in that company, left me personally disconnected from myself. And I feel like that's the case for a lot of people. So if you're listening right now and you can relate to this, please, reach out to me. Let's chat, because I know the feeling of chasing something outside of you and losing yourself in the process. That is ultimately what happened to me and how I experienced a burnout because my nervous system was completely dysregulated. I was so disconnected from myself, I didn't even recognize myself anymore. And honestly, that was the turning point for me, the fear of who am I? And to help you understand what this looked like for me, I often share this example where I remember vividly being in a group setting with some friends who I have known for years, and we always have fun together. And I picture myself, and even like if I close my eyes and I think back to that time, I picture myself sitting in this booth at this bar. We're all there, everybody's laughing, and I'm numb. I'm sitting there almost like an out of body experience, and I'm unable to connect with what they're saying. I'm unable to even react to what they're saying. Everyone's laughing, and I'm just there like, oh, I should laugh now because everyone else is laughing. Oh, okay, let me join in. But there was nothing going on inside, which is really scary because I'm someone who, hopefully you can see through here, I'm full of life. I'm super enthusiastic. I'm optimistic. I'm someone who is always looking on the brighter side. I'm almost optimistic to a fault because I always see the good in people. I always give people benefit of the doubt, give them a second chance. I'm always smiling. I'm always happy. I'm always positive. So to be reacting in this way, and I feel like the best way to describe it is that I'm disconnected or I was disconnected from myself to not be able to experience emotions. And that brings us to something else. Emotions are so important and we're so afraid to feel them. And I understand because we've never been taught how to feel them. And so part of my mission is also helping you, helping everybody out there understand that emotions are there to help us, to educate us, to let us know some information that's going on. And if we suppress our emotions and we don't want to feel our emotions because it's the bad ones that we want to suppress, well, guess what? You're suppressing the good feelings as well. And everything gets lodged and stuck and pushed, and eventually it will build up so much that it needs to erupt. It needs to come out. The example I often give is that emotions are energy in motion, emotion. They need to move, they need to flow. Here's a quick exercise that I could share with you right away in terms of emotions. The next time that you want to suppress your emotions, because that's what you've been doing, I encourage you to do this instead. I want you to sit with your emotions. I know that seems scary, but what if I told you that emotions, all they want to do is they want to be felt and then they're going to be released? And usually that process takes about a minute and a half. So if you can tell yourself that if you allow yourself to feel this emotion for a minute, 90 seconds max, it will then pass through. If you allow yourself to feel it, you can allow yourself to then begin the healing process. If you feel like you're not able to safely express them, like for example, if you know that you're about to cry for about a minute and you're at work, go to the bathroom, go for a walk, go somewhere where you can find a little bit of privacy and safety and let it out. And trust me, the more you do this, the more that you unblock everything that you've been suppressing for so long, the happier your nervous system will be, because then it'll actually have the space to be able to respond in the way that will help you. And you'll make space for new emotions as well. And you won't feel so blocked up and guarded. And I tell you this story because that's how I was. I was completely guarded. And part of my disconnect was not allowing myself to feel those emotions. So, not even being able to recognize the little red flags or those little cues along my career that were telling me, maybe this is not for you anymore, or maybe you need to find another job. I was not available to see any of those signs. I was not tuned in. I was not paying attention. Those are those whispers that they call them. Well, those whispers were definitely inaudible to me. And it only clicked and I only paid attention when those whispers became screams. And please, let's not let it get to that point because that's when it's almost like it's too late. It's like a now or never situation, which is what I experienced. So now that we have the context of me being someone who is at the core creative, an artist who likes to do things her own way, but who followed the path that was laid out for her, that society said, this is what you need to do to be successful. So go ahead, check the boxes. Go to school, get the straight A's, be an honor student, go to university, graduate with honors again, land a job in a very profitable industry, get a secure career, in my case, in marketing and advertising, climb the ladder quickly to become director within 3 years of being in the industry, and then stay there and continue to build and climb and get that money and get that success for the rest of your life. I was along that path. I was 10 years in. I'm even going to say maybe 8 or 9 years in to my 10-year advertising career. And everything was chugging along. Everything was going great. I was happy. I was actually super thrilled to be in this job. I was getting to work with the top global brands in beauty. I became the beauty expert of the agency. So I had all of the top clients. I got to travel to New York on a regular basis to meet with these clients. I got to work on amazing creative campaigns. I got to give presentations on a regular basis, which I loved. I got products. Yay. Who doesn't love receiving free products, right? So it was a wonderful, wonderful career and a great environment. I love the people I worked with. Everything was amazing until it wasn't. And for me, I think what started to derail my happiness and my progression was the fact that I was dealing with a lot of high maintenance clients. High maintenance clients, meaning they needed my attention so much. They were very demanding, and I was one person dealing with 10 clients. I feel like I had maybe a handful of high maintenance clients, but each of them had multiple projects. So I was easily working on 10 projects at a time. And I was also alone. I remember at the agency at the time where I started to take my downward spiral, I was a director with no team, so I was doing everything on my own. And I remember asking for some help, and the help never came. Why? Because Sabrina would complete her tasks. So I don't blame my management for being like, well, she's going to do it anyway. So why are we going to dish out money to hire her a team when she can just get it done? Yes, that is the people pleaser in me. That is the perfectionist in me. The person who's like, oh, I'm just going to take it all and I'm just going to do it all, and I'll do it my way. And even if you wanted to help me, there were a few coordinators there, which I'm sorry, because looking back, I know you had mentioned that I was intimidating, and I can now see why, because I would just want to do it all myself. I didn't have the patience to explain. I didn't have the patience to teach you. Again, I was guarded. I was not emotionally receptive. I was not able to communicate in a helpful way to help you along your career. And I know now why. It's because that's how I was taught. I was taught with a very old school mentality of figure it out. And that thankfully made me a very resilient person. I am always someone who's going to figure it out. You give me a problem, I got a solution. Maybe I got five, right? So I'm grateful for my boss when I started my career, who was very hands off in the sense of you figure it out and then come to me with potential solutions and we'll talk about it. So because that's how I learned, that's the only form of management and direction that I was accustomed to. That's how I started to manage. But generations are different, people are different. And I wasn't open and receptive to what those coordinators needed at the time. And I was just trying to push my way onto them, being like, figure it out. But that wasn't what was good for them. And so again, if you're listening, I apologize because I can see now how I did not have the patience or take the time to give you what you needed. And so this is all coming back now because I was able to do the work and because I was able to see that maybe the way that I was taught was good for me, but not necessarily the way that I want to be teaching. And so let's come back to my feeling of being alone, of overworked, of stressed. On top of it, I had some of the most demanding clients in the industry. The breaking point for me was when I clearly remember being undervalued by a client. I had worked overtime for them, went above and beyond, showed up, bent over backwards basically to make sure that they were happy. And when it came down to budget, they opted to go with somebody else less senior than me because it fit their budget. I was devastated. Not because I had quote unquote lost the account, but because after everything that I had done for this client, and like, let's be real, I had done so much out of my scope to make sure that you are happy, dear client. You then decide, well, if it comes down to budget, then we're not going to work with Sabrina anymore. We'll just get somebody else. And I was just a number. I put so much effort, emotion. I made it personal, which I now understand was my mistake from the beginning, but it did become personal because I was giving you all the energy that I had. And at the time, it was very little because I was spread so thin over these 10 projects and these multiple, all demanding clients, that when that client said to me, basically, when they opted out of working with me, what I heard is, you're not worth it. We will not spend the extra money to put into you, so you do not have value. And I was crushed. And it's because I felt that I wasn't worthy. It was the point where I felt, what am I doing here? Is this all worth it? Like I'm going crazy, working, trying to make everybody else happy, clients, agency, creative team. And in the process, this client doesn't even value me enough to put in the extra dollars to work with me. Like for me, that was the point where I said, okay, there's something ultimately wrong with this formula. And why am I also basing my worth on what someone else thinks of me? And I remember, man, I vividly see that experience being in my boss's office, myself and my two bosses, the two partners of the company, we're in his office and it's probably like after hours because it was dark out for sure. So we're staying overtime to talk to this client. And this is what she says over the phone. Like, okay, well, we won't work with Sabrina then. Just give me somebody cheaper. And I know that they saw my face dropped, and I was just like broken inside. And we will all refer to this experience moving forward as the breaking point of when I started to enter my burnout phase because I wasn't the same after that. Once somebody tells you that you're not worth it, well, how do you think I'm going to then wake up in the morning? Am I going to be excited? Absolutely not. So I'd wake up in the morning feeling like, ugh, now I got to go deal with these clients that don't even value me. They don't even care. I'm doing everything I can for them and they don't even care. So that began my disconnect from my job because before that, I loved making people happy. Again, people pleaser over here, but that was the essence of my job. I needed to make sure everybody was happy, everybody was taken care of, the projects were rolling, everything was good. And once you're told you're not valuable by the client, and it's not what she said, but that's what I heard, that was my perception, then how do you think I'm going to approach all my other clients? I'm going to feel like, well, if one client feels that way, then everybody else is probably taking advantage of me too. Taking advantage. Yes, that's exactly how I felt. I felt like I was being taken advantage of my time, of my energy, of my skills, of my kindness, of my ability to show up and to really want to be there because, like I said, this was my dream job. I don't know if I said it in that way, but I'll say it again. This was my dream job, and I had achieved that, and I was loving it, and I loved all the projects I was working on. But the minute I realized that I was replaceable or I was being taken advantage of, that's when things started to shift, and I had to question my place. And a lot of hard questions came up that I avoided at first because we don't like to deal with those hard questions because deep down we know what the answer to that question is. It's change, and change is scary. So I suppressed it. I suppressed those whispers that came up that told me maybe it's time to look for something else. Maybe you need to be creating more impact. Maybe you need to be working with people differently. Maybe this isn't for you anymore. But like, how? What else would I do? I worked so hard for this. So who am I to now say, well, I want to change. I want something different. Like anybody else would kill for this job. So then the guilt comes in. The guilt of feeling like I wanted more because I already had everything. Everything was great. On paper, it was amazing. But my emotions wanted to be heard. And over the next year and a half, it began to manifest and transform into physical discomfort. I got sick a lot. But again, it was, oh, I'm stressed. I didn't want to actually deal with the problem, which was the environment or the job was no longer right for me. I was going to the excuses that would put a band-aid over the situation. Oh, I just need to take another vacation. Oh, I just need help on my team. Oh, I just need to let go of some accounts so I could focus a little more. Because you can always justify and validate and talk yourself out of how you're really feeling. Your emotions are there to give you information, but your brain is so intelligent that it could convince you of anything you want. So I was convincing myself that it was just stress, that it wasn't bigger to the point where if it was bigger, which it was, I had to make some serious choices. I wasn't ready for that yet. But again, going back to how I would wake up in the morning and the first thing I thought was, how do I call in sick? It's not normal. I would show up to work late. I was coming in so late at one point that it was like, it was ridiculous. But that was me dragging my feet in the morning, snoozing because I didn't want to face the day, and then dreading the fact of going into work and dealing with these clients. And this one client really ruined everything for me because my other clients were lovely. Yes, they were demanding, but at the time where I had the energy and I had the space to be able to help them, I was there for them. But after that one client told me what she did, it left such an imprint and an impression. I then felt like all my other clients were feeling the same way, which wasn't fair because they weren't. But they had also gotten used to over asking because I always over delivered. So, if this is a teaching moment, boundaries. Boundaries are so important, even in the position that I was in. Actually, even more important because I was in the position of a client director. I was the person who was in the middle. So, when I explained before that I had to make sure everybody was happy, that means that I was the person at the agency who received the client brief of the new product that they wanted to launch, ideas of their media spend, the type of campaigns that they wanted to run with their budget. And I had to create a brief to then go brief the creative team to get ideas of how they wanted to execute and how they wanted to bring that campaign to life. And then once that was approved, back and forth, timelines, project management, making sure everything fit in budget, I then had to work with the production team to make sure that what we had in mind in terms of the creative was actually feasible and able to be produced within the client's budget. And then we would launch it. So these were like months long projects from start to finish. And how amazing that I got to actually be there from the beginning to the end, be there for the client brief, and then actually see the project go live. One of my best memories, and this is the one that will stand out, it was my first multi-million dollar budget project. It was for a big global beauty brand based out of New York for their new perfume launch. And we decided that we wanted that launch to take place in Soho at sunrise. And we actually managed with production and a whole bunch of people helping us. We had such an amazing team. We managed to shut down the streets of Soho between like midnight and 7 a.m. or something, or 6 a.m. to film the commercial. And that experience of being able to shut down Soho for a commercial, like I felt like I have arrived. Within that same project, the next day we were doing a scene on a rooftop where we had the Brooklyn Bridge in the background, but like to be able to be in these locations and to be able to have a view of New York and to feel like I'm literally on top of the world because we were so high up on that rooftop that I was like, oh my God, I've made it. I am on top of the world. So these are beautiful memories that I have. But just to give you an idea of the extent of the projects that we were working on, like these were huge projects. And when we're talking millions of dollars for a company at that time, where this was 10 years ago. So that was a lot of money and that was a lot at stake. So there was a lot of pressure. And being that middleman, I really had to make sure that those relationships that I was managing were all intact. So, fast forward to me starting my burnout, when I was showing up late to work, not being my full self, or not being present with clients or with the creative team or with the agency in general with my coworkers, it was quite alarming because I had become a different person. And I think for me, I was numb. I was void of emotion for so long. I didn't allow myself to feel the emotions for so long because I had suppressed them that I didn't know what to feel anymore. I was just exhausted. And I think the biggest thing for me is that I felt that I had no purpose anymore. Again, going back to that one comment that one client made, isn't it crazy how the opinion of one person can make you feel that way about yourself? Can make you actually devalue your worth? Because that's what happened. I didn't feel like I had a place anymore. I felt like everything that I've been working so hard to achieve just came crashing down. I sadly didn't recognize myself anymore. I no longer had that spark, that joy. I didn't have any more passion. I remember at that time, I threw myself back into dance just to feel something different than what I was feeling. Like the job and the career that once had me exactly where I was meant to be in terms of feeling that I had a purpose, that I felt fulfilled, it no longer worked for me. But it wasn't even a question at that time to reflect on, is this job still what I want to do? Like I was locked in, I was set for life. So if this is what my path is and I'm not happy with this path, well, we got to find something else that we're happy with. So I threw myself back in dance. I actually went into ballroom dancing, which was a brand new style for me. And I began to learn again. I was a student again. I began competing. That gave me purpose. It gave me a sense of fulfillment because I won my competition. So I felt like those goals I was setting in dance were being achieved and I found my place there. And so that's why I think the dragging out of leaving my job, my corporate job, lasted for so long because I was still getting that fulfillment elsewhere. Had I not had dance, I think we would have come to a conclusion a lot sooner, or we would have hit rock bottom a lot sooner. So, dance, movement, outside passion, I encourage everyone to find something that still lights you up. If it's your job, that's amazing, but I feel like that's not enough. I feel like we maybe need to have something else to balance so that we're not putting all the pressure on one sole way to make yourself feel like you have a purpose and feel like you have passion. Because what if one day that doesn't work out anymore? If that changes, like that's a lot of pressure to be placing on that one thing. So back to the job, I was resisting the inevitable. I was trying to find ways to still make it work in my job, but it had been too far gone. So, what happened next for me is that the more I stepped into dance and really put a lot of energy and focus into it, the more competitions I did, the more successful I became in that area of my life, I began to see a little more clearly what was missing in my career. And I started to feel like I didn't want this to be my life. I didn't want to be in this pattern for another 10 years. I was not about to settle for, okay, my job, it's mediocre. It doesn't make me happy anymore, but it pays the bills. Let me just put everything I have in dance. Like, no, for me, I didn't want to settle in that mediocre lifestyle. I wanted all areas of my life to be thriving. I wanted to be happy everywhere, including your job. And for those listening, if you have a 9 to 5 corporate job, do you realize how much time you spend at that job? So if you're not happy, that is a big percentage of your life that you're missing out on. If you would be able to find happiness in your job, maybe that could be, it doesn't have to be as drastic as me changing careers, but finding another department, finding another position in the same company. There are options for you to find happiness in your job. And that's what I was realizing that I wanted. But I was so scared to make any kind of move, any kind of drastic shift, because it would be drastic. Again, I'd been working towards this for so long. And now that I had it, number one, guilt of wanting more. Number two, identity crisis. Who am I if I'm not Sabrina, the client director in advertising? I'm the corporate chick who is the beauty expert who gets to travel to go to all these amazing shoots and meetings and presentations. And so who would I be if I wasn't that? It's pretty scary because you got to start reinventing yourself. And at the time, I think I was around 35. So too late to reinvent yourself. Like I should be settled in my career. But again, why are these questions coming up? Because inner child Sabrina remembers her artistic, creative side and how she wants to do things differently. And so starting to reconnect with her took a lot of effort, but she was speaking to me through these screams, no longer whispers, but she was telling me, this is no longer for you. There's something bigger for you. So now here come the hard questions. And they're hard because once you face them, you know that there's going to be change involved, and often quite drastic, in my case anyway. So when you start to ask yourself, what else could there be for me? Am I too old to start a new career? Who am I going to be if I'm not an advertising director? What else am I capable of? What skills do I have? What else could I do? What will others think if I leave this secure job behind? What are they going to think of me? How will they react if I decide to change my life? Because the fear of judgment is a big one that holds us back. Because the way that we're perceived in the eyes of others will determine who we are in terms of identity. And so Sabrina, the advertising exec who dances on the side, it's a nice little hobby she has. Well, if she decides one day to go full time into dance, like who does that? Like, why would you do that? That's not secure. That's not a solid job or a solid plan. That doesn't follow what society wants for us as success. But again, remember, inner child Sabrina wants something different. But wait, before we get there, I will say that I was so conditioned by what I thought I wanted and needed and deserved in terms of success, that the guilt was keeping me there. The guilt of wanting more and having worked so hard for this job was keeping me in that job, that I did not ask myself these hard questions. Someone else did for me. Someone else gave me permission. My boss gave me permission to start asking myself these questions. He recognized himself in me, and he knew that the path I was on needed a redirect. So to this day, I still thank him for giving me permission to start asking myself these hard questions and start looking for what else there could be for me. So if you're listening and you've started to maybe reflect or to have these feelings, or if you can relate to any part of my story, this is me giving you permission to ask yourself the hard questions, to be okay with change. Because guess what? It's your life. You only have one, and you get to decide how you want to live it. So if I take that advice for myself, I had to really put the opinion of others aside, put the judgment of myself, of who I thought I was, aside, and start to unpack and reconnect with myself. Because guess what? We grow, we evolve as humans. So wouldn't it be natural that what you spend your day doing in terms of your job or your career would grow and evolve as well? That there would be a chance of that changing? That we're maybe not meant to stay in the same job or career for our entire life. And I know that's something that, for example, my parents' generation were led to believe, and that's how they've modeled their life, where they choose a career, it works for them, they stay until retirement. And that's great. That's great for that generation. But I feel like moving forward, the newer generations are starting to look at life a little differently, especially jobs a little differently, that it's okay to have multiple careers in your lifetime. I feel like the most important thing is that you start to reconnect with yourself. You start to uncover and discover what your values are, and you start to find those jobs or that career that aligns with your values, because that's where you're going to find your purpose. That's where you're going to feel fulfilled. That's where you're going to wake up in the morning and feel like I am excited to tackle my day, being grateful that you get to choose what you want to do with your day, that you get to live the life that you live. This is what I want everybody to feel, because I have gone from one extreme to the next, let me tell you. And so, to finish on my personal story, once my boss gave me permission to start to reflect and ask myself the hard questions, and this is what I, as a coach now, do for people like you, is I hold that safe space for you to be able to ask the hard questions, to be able to get vulnerable, to connect with yourself, to do the healing that was necessary, like I did. One of those hard questions that kept coming up for me personally was, there has to be more than this. I felt like something was missing. I felt like there was so much more that I personally could be doing to help people. And when I would start to reflect on, okay, well, what else do you want to do? The only thing that came to mind is I want to help people. And I know that's very general, because if you look at it from the perspective of where I was in the advertising agency, I was helping people. I was helping people in their marketing goals achieve success for their company. So I was still helping people, but there was something that was missing. I felt like I wanted to go on a deeper level. I wanted to impact these humans' lives, like their personal lives. Yes, their business was thriving, and as a result, their personal lives were successful and they were happy, but I felt like it was too superficial for me. I really wanted to be able to connect with the human and to help them in ways that they didn't even realize they needed help. And I didn't realize at the time what that was. So, in order for me to really find what that new career was for me, or where I could impact and help people, I needed space. So, I left. I left my secure, safe corporate job with the support of my boss, who to this day, I will always remember him saying, no matter what you choose, whatever career path, I will be at the front of the parade cheering you on. And I think that was the encouragement that I needed to know that, first of all, he recognized himself in me. He had been through what I'd been through. He left his corporate job around the time, I think he was probably the same age as I was, and built the agency from scratch. And now he's super successful. At the time, he's always been successful, but to see his story and his journey, and then have him recognize the signs of burnout and misalignment and being on the wrong path. He knew because he had been there, and then have him tell me that he encouraged me to go off and find what made me happy. He kept saying dance, because they all knew there I was dancers. He's like, go open a dance studio, go dance professionally. And so I did take the time to reconnect with dance. But when I left the job, I left with the purpose of not having a backup. It might sound a little counterintuitive saying, like, well, what do you mean you left with no backup? Like, I felt like I needed a clean slate. So to have a backup, I couldn't rely on that given the growth journey and the self-development journey that I was about to embark on. I needed to have the space, the time, the energy to reconnect with myself, to reflect on who I am now. Who I was at 25 when I started advertising was a completely different person. So at 35, who am I right now? What are my values? What are my desires? What lights me up? What makes me happy? And that's what I need to lead with. That's what I need to base my foundation on, to then decide what job, what career is going to align with me as a person right now and take me further and allow me to wake up happy and excited every day, instead of waking up dreading the day ahead, or even feeling like this is a life that I'm going to be stuck in for the next 10 years, or there must be more to this life. Like, I needed to take control. I needed to empower myself to create that life that could bring me that joy and happiness that I feel we all can have. It's just scary because it's unknown. And let me tell you, the next few months after I left the agency, I was met with a lack of support from people. I was met with questions, with a bit of judgment of, what do you mean you left your job? And now, looking back with the perspective that I have, I can see that those were fears and insecurities that they had that they were projecting on me because I had the courage to leave a place that no longer worked for me so that I could create a life that I truly wanted. And not everybody has that courage. So I'm grateful and I recognize that it did take a lot of courage for me to leave a situation that no longer fulfilled me. But in that entire process, with everybody else projecting their fears onto me, there was never a moment that I felt afraid. And I feel that that's very important because the entire time I had an inner peace and a knowing that it was all going to work out. And that's my inner voice that was starting to come forward. That's the inner voice that I keep talking about that we need to reconnect to, that we need to listen to, because that's who we are at our core. And let me tell you that who you are at your core, you have all the answers within you. You just need to listen and you need to act on it. And we often silence that inner voice because the external voices, the noise outside, is too loud. That inner voice feels like a calm voice. It's not going to yell. The yelling is the ego. So it's that calm sense of security, sense of peace that tells you that everything's going to be okay. In my case, anyway. So, in the months that I set aside for my healing journey, where I was able to rest, to recharge, I traveled, I did the things that I loved. I reconnected to who I was at the core. I reconnected to young Sabrina again, who was just creative, who was living her life carefree. I needed to get back to that version of myself to start to rebuild again and to get to know myself. Who am I now? And asking myself these questions of like, okay, what do I value? What gets me excited? What allows me to really feel like I'm stepping into my purpose? Where do I feel my best? And what came back, in addition to helping people, as I mentioned, was teaching, teaching dance. There's something about seeing the immediate result of your impact on someone else that filled me with so much joy that I needed to get back to it. So I started teaching again. I slowly went back into regular classes. And this was my quote unquote backup, where I was like, well, I already had a career in teaching dance. So let me, as I figure out my bigger career, let me just dabble back in my dance teaching. Let me get a few classes here and there, get some money flowing in, because girls got to eat, girls got to live, right? So I entered it intuitively, naturally, organically. And guess what? It's remained one of the most important parts of my life. And so, again, when I say reconnect to that inner child or to the things that bring you joy, the things that you used to enjoy doing that you no longer have time to do, reconnecting with that puts you in an energy of receiving, of being open to opportunities, of being in a space that's so deeply connected and rooted in who you are that it's going to naturally start carving the path that you're meant to be on. When you start forcing your way through a path, that's when things are met with resistance. That's when you start to feel like something's off, like something's missing. So, my goal for the next few months after leaving my 9 to 5 job was to just start to reconnect with myself again and see where that path led me, having that deep inner trust and knowing that it was all going to work out. I just needed to be open to those opportunities and see what felt right for me. But getting to that point involved a lot of inner healing, a lot of emotional release. And I did that through meditation, through having a mentor who really helped me through the process. And these are all modalities and ways that I now help my clients as a coach, because I feel like in order to make a decision and feel confident in your decision, you need to know that it's based in one of your values. And a lot of us don't know who we are anymore. We just kind of coast through life on this autopilot mode that we set when we were 25. And we never think to readjust, to recalibrate, to revisit and see, are we still that same person? Guaranteed you are not that same person because things change. And so, if you yourself change, how could you redirect your life and your path to then ensure that it aligns with who you are becoming? And this is something that I so passionately, strongly believe in that I've made it my new career. Seeing how I was able to take myself out of a toxic environment for me. It was toxic to me because it no longer worked for me. And I was trying so hard to force it that it was just making everything miserable. The environment itself was great. And I miss the people. I actually do really miss them a lot. But taking myself out of my toxic environment and allowing myself to discover where my new life needed to go was one of the biggest gifts that I could have given myself. And that's why I say that the burnout that I experienced saved my life. Had I not experienced that burnout, I would have not started that reflection process, which then led me to have the conversation with my boss, who, again, thank you for giving me permission and saying those beautiful words of encouragement to help me realize that, hey, this chapter is done. Speaking of chapters, at that time, one of my close friends had said the most profound thing that so resonated that to this day I will still remember her words. This chapter of your life is done. You've learned everything you could learn in this job. You've grown as much as you can, and now it's time to turn the page. And so, her words of wisdom I will pass on to you and have you reflect on if your chapter is done. Have you learned everything you could learn? Have you exhausted all opportunities? Have you reached a point where you've now outgrown your job? And if so, that's okay. It just means that you're ready to begin a new chapter. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not a failure. There's nothing more you could do to help yourself, to force yourself to feel a different way. And this is all stuff that I tried to do. It's the acceptance and the realization that it's just a completed chapter. It's a portion of your life that you've finished. And that's okay. Because guess what? You get to move on to something else. And that's where the fear turns into excitement. Because when I had that realization that I could use the fear of the unknown and the uncertainty and actually get excited about what I wanted to do next, not ever realizing that I could have this opportunity again in my life, that's where I was really able to get into that energy that I wanted to be able to attract what I truly desired. So the excitement of, hey, at 35, I get to decide again what I want to do with my life. Like I thought that only happened once when you finish university and then you start your life and then you're set. But no, you get to do it as often, as many times, and whenever you want. It's your life. No one else is. So you need to make the rules. You need to decide when the chapter is done and when a new one begins. So here we are, almost 6 years later, because I left in 2019. And obviously, there were some interruptions in the past 6 years. But honestly, that interruption of time standing still and everything shutting down gave me that peace and quiet and calmness that was so helpful on my healing journey. So I'm grateful for that time, that year of 2020, to just kind of be with myself and reflect and do all of the inner work that was needed without any distractions because everything was on hold. That led me to discover what my purpose is that aligns with my values so that I could show up every day with intention and feel fulfilled. And so now, as a dance teacher, because I am still a dance teacher, will always be a dancer and a teacher, I am a transformational mindset coach who encourages you to ask yourself the hard questions, to get honest, to discover and reconnect with who you truly are, to understand your emotions, to help yourself heal so that you can create the life that you've always wanted. Not based on anyone else's rules. I want you to define and design your own path. As someone who's done it, again, creative young Sabrina, she's always been in there. She's just listened to other people for far too long. So now she listens to herself and she decides what path she wants to go on. And if it's different than everyone else's, which it usually is, that's okay because that's true to who she is. So if you're listening and you have any kind of inner gut feeling, that intuition, that inner voice that is telling you to choose the path less followed, do it. because everyone else is going to tell you not to. Everyone else is going to tell you to choose the path that's most traveled. I feel like there's a famous quote that I'm severely missing out on in this opportunity. I am missing out on it, but you all know what I'm talking about. The path less traveled is the one where you can make it unique to you. Yes, it's scary because no one's walked it before. You need to carve it, you need to pave it. Yes, it's uncertain because you're figuring it out along the way, but aren't we all? Isn't that just what we're doing in life? We're figuring it out along the way. So why not figure it out in a way that feels good for you and not try to figure it out according to someone else's rules and someone else's experience? So, this is what I now am so grateful that I get to do for people like you. I get to help you silence the noise, listen within, and uncover all of that wisdom and all of those answers that are already within you. It's not about me telling you the path that you need to go on. It's about me holding the space for you to be able to discover that for yourself. And then maybe strategically, we're going to see what is that first step that you can take along that path. What does that look like for you? I will keep you accountable. I will encourage you. I will give you the tools to be able to help yourself listen to that inner voice, shift that mindset, look from a new perspective, and most importantly, get in touch with your emotions. Emotional intelligence and resilience is so important. We don't trust our emotions because we've never been taught to. We don't release our emotions because we don't know how in a safe way. So this is what I will help you do as well. Because if you're all bottled up with emotions, you can't trust yourself. There's too much guck in there that doesn't allow you to be able to hear or to listen to what feels right. My work as a coach allows me to guide people like you through your own transformation. I know how hard it is to feel stuck or uninspired or misaligned or feel like you're just not where you're meant to be anymore. But I also know it's possible to create a life that's authentically yours. And that's what I want to help you do because I feel like we all can. It just maybe takes somebody else who's been through it, like me, someone else who can hold your hand, who could give you the tools, who can empower you to step into that version of yourself that has been there the whole time. You maybe just suppressed her a little bit, or you don't realize that she can actually be living her best life. So, to recap, I am someone who does things differently. I tried to suppress that part of me for so long by doing all the right things growing up and checking off all the boxes and getting to that version of success they told me would be my highlight of life. And it was for a few years until I evolved and I forgot to check in with myself and see, is this still what I want? So my body let me know. Things happened to let me know that it was time to close that chapter and to move on. Had I not had somebody who believed in me, support and encourage me to take that next step, I would not be here talking to you today. So let me be that person for you to support you, to encourage you, to let you know that if you're in a position where you feel like you want to do things differently, but you're afraid of being judged, you're afraid of what others will think, you're afraid of the unknown, there's so much fear in what could be that you hold back on what is possible. There's so much fear in what if it doesn't work out that you miss out on what if it does. So let's get excited about the success that you want on your terms. Let's get excited about all the potential that your life can have. And know that all of what you want, your desires, everything that you are questioning, if you're lost, if you're confused, if you're unsure of what your next step is, all the answers, you already have them. We look outside for the validation, for the guidance, for the advice, when we need to just be taught how to unlock those answers within. And that's what I do for you. Because I've done it for myself and I've had people do it for me. So now I want to pay it forward. I want to be that person to help you unlock that inner wisdom to be able to live a life that feels true to you. So if ever you've had a thought that your path is not quite right, that you feel like something's missing, even though everything looks amazing, you feel guilty for wanting more, you wake up dreading the day ahead, you feel like you don't have purpose, you've lost passion for life, you feel like the spark that you once had as a child is gone, here's the first thing I want you to do. I want you to find one thing that brings you joy. I want you to go back to your inner child and think of what used to make you happy. Thankfully, I still have dance in my life, so I went back to dance. And I got into that creative space that allowed me to just get in touch with that inner child, to reconnect with her, and just start living from her perspective instead of the jaded perspective that I had on life, considering that I was living for everyone else's expectations. So, what is it that you can do right now to connect with that inner child, to make her happy again? And then, if you have any kind of hesitation of where your life currently is, if you have, more importantly, a feeling of this can't be all there is, there has to be more to this life, there's something missing, I want you to reach out to me. Because these are extremely important questions that you have to begin to ask yourself. But I know how scary that could be to do it alone. So let me be that person for you to help you, to guide you, to find those answers within, to then take those small steps towards creating a change that will realign your life with your values, with your purpose, so that you can wake up excited every day. I'm going to give you another challenge. I want you to take 10 to 15 minutes today to reflect on this one question. If there were no limits, no fear, no judgment, what would your dream life look like? I want you to grab your journal, grab a notebook, write it down, get as detailed as possible, visualize it, really feel into the senses. Close your eyes and ask yourself, what does my dream life look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it sound like? What does it taste like? Get nitty-gritty with the details to visualize as clear as possible. And once you have that vision, and once you've written it all down, I want you to ask yourself this next question. What's one small step that I can take to move closer to this vision? Small step, something that will stretch you out of your comfort zone, but not push you over the edge. So what is that small step that leads you a little bit closer to that beautiful dream that you've just visualized? So maybe it's starting a new morning routine. Maybe it's trying something new, reading a new book, learning a new skill, signing up for a class that allows you to learn a new skill. So it's not even learning the skill, it's signing up for the class. What is that one step that can bring you closer to creating that dream life? Because I want you to remember that every journey starts with a single step. And where we get lost is we try to have all the steps figured out. We try to visualize the entire roadmap and the entire plan. And we get lost in the details because we can never know fully how that plan is going to unravel, how it's going to come into existence. And there's something so beautiful and magical about leaving yourself open to the opportunity of the path and the plan changing along the way. It allows you to truly be in the moment, to be present with yourself, to be connected to who you are and where you want that journey to take you. So that's why I encourage all of my clients and everyone here listening now to just decide on that one step, because that step is going to bring you forward in a direction closer to your goal. And then from there, you take the next step and the next and the next and the next. So you have your goal and then you just focus on the steps that you need to take along the way. If you've made it to the end, thank you. This was a long one, but I really wanted to get detailed with my story and my journey. If this resonated with you, please reach out to me, DM me, send me a message, leave a comment. Let me know how this has helped you, impacted you. If you'd like to dive deeper and further into how we can work together, how you can design a life that feels good for you from someone who's done it, someone who's broken free of the mold, who's gone against what society has said was success and has created her own version of success. My own version of success is being able to design my own schedule, to decide what I want to do each day, to work with the people that I want to work with, and to feel like I am making a difference every day. That is successful to me. So you need to reevaluate what success looks like for you and then decide how to get there. Thank you so much for listening today. Again, if you're new here, I hope this was a good introduction to who I am and what you can expect in this podcast. I want to leave you with these words. Just because one person in your life has told you that you can't do something, or that you're not worthy, or that you're not valuable, it doesn't determine who you are. Believe in yourself enough to know that you are worthy of all great things. And if one path doesn't feel right, or one environment, or one situation does not feel right, trust that that's your inner voice and your intuition letting you know that it's time to move on. And you will be able to truly thrive in an environment where you feel like you can be yourself, that you can align with your core values, and you can really show up every day with intention, with purpose, with passion, and you can live a fulfilled life.